him to knock. Like, don't play.
Hey man,
Like,
if you catch me in mid spank, I'm sorry.
what's up, peoples? It's your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And your man Omega.
We're back. After an unexpected break, we're picking up right where we left off. Maybe a little bit different. So sit back as we catch you up on the past year and tackle an important topic that many of us could stand to discuss: boundaries. How to recognize them, set them, and discern when they're being broken. As every episode, we want to thank each and every one of you for listening. We truly appreciate the time you take to tune into our conversations.
A special thank you goes out to our Patreon subscribers for their support of the show. Every little bit helps us reach our goals.
And if you want to join in on our conversation, feel free to hit us up on Twitter or Instagram or even TikTok at Have a Drink Cast, and make sure you use the hashtag HADcast.
This is always a conversation. If you have a story to share, or even want to suggest a topic for an episode, feel free to join our Discord as well. The link will be in the description.
And please, if you like what we're doing here, share us with your friends, your family, your neighbors, your favorite podcasting site. Your referrals and reviews mean a lot to us, as that's how we gain more listeners.
Thank you again.
And get prepared to sit
Think.
and have a drink.
Welcome to the Have a Drink podcast. Enjoy the episode.
What he said.
Peace.
What's up, peoples, and welcome back to another episode of the Have a Drink podcast, where we invite you to sit, think, and have a drink. We're your bartenders, Mr. Z.
And I'm your boy Omega.
Hey.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Man, it has been a long time.
Oh, absolutely. We took an unexpected hiatus.
Very much so. Life smacked us both, but it's been beautiful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I feel like before we jump into our episode, it would be great to kind of catch people up. We had an episode that was supposed to be our Christmas one that never ended up coming out because there was so much life happening, just so much kind of like piled on top of each other. Busy, busy, busy. I mean, hey, let's why don't we just like, address the elephant in the room and be like, what was going on for you, that kind of caused you to be like, oh, I'm I don't know, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to.
Well, for those of you that may not know, we were pregnant and we ended up having a baby. Um, we were blessed to have,
Omega and his wife,
yes,
not
not
me and
not me.
Omega.
Yeah,
We should clarify.
you're right. I forgot. 2022. Yes, my wife and I, we were expecting and we had a baby. We brought into this world a beautiful baby girl. Shout out to my daughter Journey. Gonna put her out there, first time ever.
Beep, 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 beep. Dee, 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 dee,
Yeah,
dee.
man, that was a long, hard road just to get here, and now that she's here, it's simply amazing. It's been worth everything.
I feel like all of our fans feel the same way. They like what I think you feel inside is just exactly this.
Yes, yes. This bliss, blessed. I can't say anymore before I start crying, so I'm good. But yeah, so
Give
I
it
just want to
up.
say thank you to everybody. It's kind of crazy, just letting people know that this was happening and then to finally have her here. It has truly, truly been amazing. So yeah, we had to take some time away, kind of get our minds and our bodies right, as well as just get the world, set the world up and get it ready for our journey to really begin. So
That's
yeah,
very sweet.
thank you.
It's very sweet.
So cheers to that.
Absolutely. I didn't wasn't there a couple other huge life shifts that happened for you as well?
Oh man, there's so much life that did happen. Outside of me getting into San Jose State and then
Hey.
crushing those semesters. Um, Actually, yesterday, Friday, the 19th was actually my first day of starting school again up for my senior year at San Jose State. So I'm entering into my last one. What else happened? My eldest daughter got married. She also had a baby, and so I am now a grandfather as well. So my
How
daughter,
quick did that happen?
oh man, it is crazy. Literally, my daughter's born in April. My granddaughter's born in June.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's pretty wild. My daughter graduated San Jose State as well as she got married. So graduated, got married, had a baby. Boom, boom, boom.
Man, that's beautiful. That's quite the journey indeed. I'm
Right.
so excited to have my little niece in the world.
Yes, sir. How about you, my man? Talk about it.
Oh my goodness, what has happened? A lot happened. I know a lot happened for us as far as work and stuff, picking back up in full swing.
Most definitely.
We, picked back up on the Warriors, we picked up on the Giants, picked up on the 49ers, and just things just kind of have taken off since then. Doing so much stuff with mascotting outside of there, doing so much with Lucille as Seal Curity, doing fun things. If you've been following sports and more importantly the NBA, Warriors had their most recent championship win at the time of this recording, and
It's kind of funny to hear you talking
we
about
got to
this.
right. I'm sportsing, dog. I'm sportsing all over our podcasts. Hey, I've grown to be quite the fake sportser
You're doing
indeed.
great.
Uh, I could pass. um, but yeah, I mean, we got a chance to experience that in full swing of just going from like regular season to playoffs and then finals and whew. That was and then to just watch the championship game. I mean, I feel like that'll be a whole episode in of itself. I feel like we could talk about that whole experience and the journey from that side. Um, and now every time I say that word, I'm gonna laugh like when I say precise.
Yeah, man.
So thank you for that. um, but yeah, more specifically for myself, working hard, doing things for Justice
There
for
you go.
Hire, as my character Guru Merkaba. I've been on a virtual panel for Comic Con. I've been on a panel for the Urban Action Showcase that happens in New York. Um, I most recently got to be on my very first live panel at San Diego Comic Con International, the big Comic Con. So if you're like a nerdy nerd like myself, that's a big place to get invited to, especially to be on a panel. And so I feel so thankful and so humbled and honored to be able to be a part of that and be surrounded by so many great people. I ah the from directors and producers to actors and stunt individuals and just killing the game, everybody at every level, and it's really cool to be
Right.
able to like sit amongst that and be able like, hey, I'm kind of one of you right now.
Kinda.
I'm a newbie. I got my tadpole legs going. We're
Kinda. You're
no.
there, brother. You
Hey,
if you were on the panel, you were there.
hey. But yeah, so just doing my thing with that, getting my other business, um, up and running and in full swing. Yeah. So whew, just to even think about that. I mean, if you can tell right now as well, we're not on video. we're we're strictly audio podcasting it for the time being,
Right, right, right.
just until we can figure out what it is that we want to get done. Obviously, as you hear, a lot's going on in our lives between work with, sports entertainment, my own external things with filming and whatnot, and Omega, dealing and wheeling with his little partner in crime.
Oh yeah. I mean, my podcasting room has been obliterated. It is now a full-on baby room. So
Fabulous.
Journey's got her own room, so therefore I don't have a podcasting room any longer.
Hey,
I have a kitchen
oh,
table.
I was gonna say you might have to get a podcasting closet, brother. Hey, I mean, I
Bro,
know,
we
I
got so
know, I
much
make it
clothes and
look
everything.
fabulous in here, dog. But
I'm not gonna lie to you, it is pretty dope. But unfortunately, we have no space. We are
maxed out. No,
maxed out. Yeah,
no worries. But we'll as we continue to do this, we wanted to bring stuff to y'all. You know, w- we've had many of a conversation as we've passed, as we've talked in passing, and I know that we're like, we should do an episode. We should do an episode. Oh my God, I have a great idea for an episode. Hey, when are we going to do an episode? And me, I'm like, the whole time, I'm just like, I shouldn't ask. Okay. Yeah, no, baby, do baby things. Do tiny baby things. That's so much fun.
see, and that's funny you say that because me on my end, I'm like, man, I really could do a podcast right now. I would love to talk about this. I would love to talk about this. I would love to talk about this. This would be a great topic. And then, crazy enough, I've had in the last month 5 different people ask me about the podcast.
Same. I've had so many people talk. I've talked to about the podcast. I talked about the podcast while I was at Comic Con with a couple of people, and that week I saw like it was like people. It was like maybe one person listened to all of our episodes in that week, but we had a spike in downloads. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Also, I called you over the course of this time and like as we're kind of like resetting things up and getting things rolling again about our reviews. So
Hmm.
apparently there's like a whole segment of things that we've kind of like skipped over as far as like, hey, please make sure you're going out and reviewing us on all the platforms that you listen to us on. Apple Podcasts,
Really?
Spotify, yeah. Google Podcasts, like everything we're a part of. There are there are a couple different um podcasting hosts that we're reviewed on where we actually rank pretty high on the list of podcasts, and actually got to see what a few of our categories were: social issues and culture and current events. And I was like, oh cool, I don't want to really turn into like a news podcast, but like it
Hey,
sounds
man,
nice.
that's pretty dope. That's pretty dope. I was not
Yeah.
expecting that.
Yeah. And it's also fun to hear the reaction of people when I tell them the name of the podcast. It's like, "Oh, I have a podcast. It's called Have a Drink." And they're like, "Oh, what is it about? Like, drinking or different drinks?" I was like, "Actually," and I give them the whole spiel and they're like, "What?" And I swear to you, I was telling one person about it, and as I said it, people were turning their heads like, "Wait, what is this? What what? What is this podcast name again?" And so I was like, "Oh, snap. There's really good feedback." So yeah, I mean, if you're listening and, you were there and you heard me talk about it, please feel free to review us. Let us know. I mean, even reaching out to us in general and just letting us know is super helpful and super great. I know I'm doing this bit a little bit early, but as we continue to grow the cast, we're going to evolve the show hopefully in a way that is enjoyable for everyone. Um, you feel like that was good for catch
Yeah,
up?
yeah, that was solid.
Because I feel like a lot has happened.
Oh,
You
totally,
know,
totally, totally,
a lot has
totally.
happened.
On app, oh, sorry. See, because you brought it up, now I had to look. So I have my second screen up, and I'm
Of
like,
course.
Apple Podcasts, and I'm like, we're considered society and culture. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Wait, our last episode was uploaded November 7th of 2021. Wow.
Yeah.
It has been a long time. I miss you guys.
Wow, I've missed you. I've missed our wonderful listeners. Um, and yeah, I think as we get back into it, we're gonna have a new. We're gonna have so much more to talk about, so much more to do. I think
Yes.
we can tackle this via audio cast for a bit.
Hmm. Ooh, nice dab. He's not dabbing. He's just sneezing. But it looked like he was dabbing in the corner of my eye. Sorry. Since we're audio, we have to tell you what's going on.
Absolutely, and I think that's the fun part of an audio podcast is having to like give a visual descriptors of what's going on camera.
Right.
That's like actually one of my favorite things when listening to podcasts lately. I've been listening to like a lot of D&D podcasts. Side note, like shout out to Three Black Halflings cuz bruh, it has been so refreshing. Like don't get me wrong, Adventure Zone, NADPod, Dimension 20, all of them, like, they're fun casts to listen to. Great group of people, super entertaining, super sweet.
Hmm.
But like, I don't know, it's so funny when you start listening to things where you feel like I have been missing out on this, and I didn't realize I was, and it starts to like really like set things off. And
No, definitely. I it's funny. Okay, so let's just take a moment and talk about it. Let's give shout out to these other podcasts for a hot set. And I say that. So
yeah,
what is your go-to podcast? I'll just say top one because I'm only really going to say one.
ooh, dog, that depends on the mood. I mean, honestly, like it really depends on the mood. If I'm feeling something nostalgic, I listen to Talkville, which actually is a podcast out that is a rewatch podcast
Hmm.
about Smallville. And
Like the
Michael
Superman show?
Rosenbaum and yeah, so Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling they're rewatching the episodes, inviting people on and kind of like recapping what they remember, and that's not something that they've been able to do.
Hmm.
And I remember going to conventions around the time when it was still in circulation and they hadn't even finished their 10th season, and just kind of like seeing the energy and feeling like oh, this has been the last 10 years of their life. This is kind of like a thing to kind of deal with, plus some controversy. But, just kind of stuff with one of the other actors on the show.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
But they had their own personal controversy.
Got it.
But anyway, so yeah, so it's like, man, if I'm feeling like that nostalgic, Talkville. If I'm feeling like I said, if I'm feeling like I need a story to like wrap myself in, I'll go to Three Black Halflings. Like that has been my top podcast I've been
Three
listening
Black
to.
Halfling.
I mean, they have a mixture of like they run D&D campaigns. They introduced me to a whole African diaspora, like a version of D&D where called the Wagadu Chronicles.
Okay.
And so the Wagadu Chronicles, they give you uh plains of Africa like settings and in different countries, that kind of give you more of this fantasy realm. Instead of classes or races, you have lineage, you have, lion blood, and all of these other different lineages that you can come from and kind of build off of, that give more to what we're not used to having in, regular, D&D, which has been a bit more eurocentric, uh and has followed a bit more of the
Hmm.
Tolkien narrative to how it describes, you know orcs and, characters who are not typically black, or who are actually like, like elves, who are the only black elf you'll see is a dark elf, and they're evil, and the only black characters in there are considered evil for this,
Right.
that, and the third. But anyway, so yeah, what about you?
Um,
What's one podcast you've been
First of
listening
all,
to?
uh, for those of you that don't know what D&D is, that's Dungeons and Dragons, because there may be some people that don't know. when you're saying D&D.
That's fair. I'm yeah.
So, and I feel like you just nerded out so much, just like Lucas and Claire from Stranger Things, him and his sister. And I thought that was awesome because they are the only black kids I've ever seen play D&D. So, well, next to you. So, but you're not a kid, you're a grown man. But anyways, back to me. Um, the podcast that I listen to is actually Here's the Thing, and that's Kev on Stage and Angel Tanksley, and I love it. It's just they're two comedians, and they just really have a real great talk. And I'm a firm follower. I'm a friend of the podcast of the Kev on Stage Studios app and everything Kev on Stage because he promotes all everything black, from black women, black shows, young black creators, and he has his own whole thing, and I just love it. And but I really am a big fan of Here's the Thing. And my other one that I was listening to was Damn Internet You Scary with To
Yes.
Hear More and Patrick Cloud. And they too are part of it. So I'm just a really big fan of comedians, because we need to laugh. Life has been real rough, so and I love to laugh. And if you can't tell, I'm black, and I love to support black people and black things. Not saying that I shun or don't do anything else for other people, but it's like, hey, I've supported everyone else for most of my life. I would like to give back to my people. So I'm really all about supporting that, and it's been wonderful. And also, shout out to Nirvana Soul and to Veronica, to my homie.
Quite a few of our BOBs of the past.
Most
Black
definitely. Just saw her the other day, actually.
Black owned business. It's
Yes, and
fabulous.
saw Significance of Seven earlier today, and Michael Janae. Saw them today.
Nice.
Check my Instagram, you'll see we all had to meet up and play bowling, so it was pretty amazing. They got to meet Journey today, actually, too. So,
Oh, hey, hey,
hey, I knew this was
hey.
coming. As
Yeah.
soon as
Yeah,
it
you
left my
should
lips, I knew it was
yeah.
coming.
Mhm. You should have known.
Y'all,
You're
what
like,
y'all
"Oh,
can't
fuck, I let the
see,
cat out the bag. Shit.
what y'all
My
can't see is me looking to the side and not looking at this man in his eyes because I already know. If you guys can't tell, Z hasn't met her formally yet, so we're still waiting. Well, we're not waiting. He just needs to show up, or we just need to meet up, and he'll get to meet his niece.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, because she'll be 4 months on
So
Monday.
small, so squishy.
Yeah, she's amazing. Anyway, sorry, that's enough about me. We're back to the podcast.
No, 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 it's all good, brother. I think we could get into it. I was this week's topic actually came to me about a month ago.
All right.
A lot has happened in that month just alone between, going to Hawaii and also the Comic-Con panel experience.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was going to be something else also contributed
Oh
to it.
no, 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 not yet, not yet. No. Um, yeah, it came to me around that time just because I was I was having a conversation about boundaries, and I felt it was like really important because I know I have tons to say around it. But like I really wanted to be able to have this kind of discourse with you just so that we can really get friendship, a back to work saying business partnership, just kind of e- e- just random straight to all the way to random strangers. Like we rely on setting boundaries in order to have healthy choices,
Right, right,
make
right.
clear decisions of what keeps us feeling mentally, physically, and emotionally healthy. And yeah, so I mean, it's a hard thing just because I'm not going to get into any details, but just our conversation kind of birthed this because I saw the necessity of setting boundaries being an important piece to
Right,
how
right,
I
right.
grew, how I started feeling um more secure in the decisions I was making. Like, I didn't feel so flustered. I didn't feel so like, "Oh my god, I can't. I don't know what am I doing this right? Am I?" No, it calmed down. It was more of a, "Well, I hope that was right, but whatever." Like
Hmm.
I set a boundary enough of being like, "Hey, I can't. I have to bail out if it's going to go this direction." You know, or I appreciate your input, but like, I appreciate your input. I appreciate, your perspective. I respect your perspective. I'm going to
Right.
figure out what I'm going to need to do from here now. Like, now I'm going to take it in my own hands and do
Yeah.
what I can do for myself. Yeah. I don't know.
Right. That's a very interesting. First of all, it's a great way to intro in what our topic is. So great job and thank you. Um, and what's crazy is I recently put up a post like a day or two ago. Sometimes you just gotta go through things. No family, no friends,
Hmm.
no help, just God and you. And some people, were kind of like, that spoke to them. But then that also made me think about those boundaries, because you have to know how to create those boundaries for your friends, your family, your work, your whatever. Because, there are those that respect boundaries, there are those that don't know what boundaries are, there are those that don't have boundaries, and then there are those that live by nothing but having so many boundaries, you almost don't know how to deal with them, so it's just kind of crazy. But a post that I seen from U of A First People's House on Facebook. This is how they kind of wrote this. Setting boundaries is the key to a healthy relationship. Personal boundaries are important because they set the basic guidelines of how you want to be treated. Boundaries
Mm.
can ensure that relationships are mutually respectful, appropriate, and caring. And I was like, that really spoke to me, because I was like, that's something that a lot of us, especially minority kids,
Mhm.
aren't taught to have
Oh,
or
no.
to set up, especially within the house. It's like you're in my house, you have no boundaries. I am your boundaries. But then outside, it's like, well, you don't let people do this, you don't let people do that, you don't let people do this. But it's like, I'm confused.
Yeah, like, what do I listen to?
Right.
I mean, it's funny not to sound like Kenya Barris from Black AF, but I mean, it's all because of slavery, honestly. you
No,
know
no, I just got the reference. It was funny because I was like, that was actually a very great callback.
I appreciate that. But yeah, like it is, especially in our community, specifically, just because, let's take laughing for instance.
Mhm.
What is something that is so common amongst our group that when we laugh, what is something that we do? Like, remember we were talking about a
When
situation
we
that happened?
dispersed, when we just
we
ran,
we just, yeah, exactly, we just dispersed as soon as they
we
dropped
left
the
him.
bomb.
And we left him right in the middle of the conversation by himself, looking around like,
Where
where
did
did
everybody
everybody go?
go? So what Omega's referencing right now, what we're talking about is one time, uh, it was a group of us at the Warriors. We were talking. It was Lawrence, Eddie. Again, call back to people who've been on the show. Cranberry. And everybody's just chilling around, talking about a situation that had went down.
Right.
And Eddie is just like keeps us enthralled in this story. We're getting it. We're getting to the good part. We're like, okay, yeah, don't see where this is going bad. Like, it might get bad in a second. And all of a sudden he drops the bomb. And the moment he says it, and like we're like, what? We want to like laugh, everything. We just disperse. Everybody ran away. Everybody except for Lawrence. And
Shout out to
and
Lawrence, who's a
shout out
friend of the
to one of our
podcast.
loyal listeners and one of our amazing friends and amazing dancers. Um, he was left standing there, just like, Where
Where
did
did
everybody
everybody
go?
go?
Why did we all like why did everyone run away? He was just telling a story. We're not there. But like those sorts of things are so ingrained in us that like we had to like run and disperse and hide so that we could laugh so that we didn't get in trouble. We have all these double sets of rules for ourselves, for our
Hmm.
community, for our homes, so that we can feel safe in the outside world. But when it comes to inside of our home, there's so much more like levels of what is the word, lack of boundaries, yes, but unrealistic expectations,
Right, right, right.
you know uh, um um I guess what is that, hyper maturing of our children in
Correct,
order to
correct.
keep them safe. We would have we had to be hyper matured so that we didn't get into the same pitfalls and get into the same troubles that kids not of the same diaspora have gone through
Correct,
you know
correct. It's funny as you're saying this, it made me think about, how we are taught and trained to knock on our parents' door before we enter. We're taught and trained to knock before we enter. But when it comes to them entering into our room, they bust through the door like it's the police. But
right.
then it's like, can you knock? You want to say, can you knock? But then they're like, this is my house. I pay the bills in here. It's kind of like that double standard, but you're like, I'm trying to set a healthy boundary. You want me to respect your boundary, but how come you constantly disrespect mine? And that's that double standard of I don't know how to set a healthy boundary for myself and others.
Which is funny because like the reason why we're knocking on their door is the reason why we want them to knock on our door. We don't want y'all to see nothing you shouldn't be seeing. I, it just hit me. I was like, oh, yeah, that's why they ask us to knock. And that's why we want them to knock. Like, don't play
Hey man,
like
if you catch me in mid spank, I'm sorry. As a child, I'm like, I'm 13. What am I gonna do? What else am I gonna do? I'm discovering myself.
the door is locked. The door, sorry, not locked. The door is shut, and I have a computer in my room. What do you think is gonna happen?
Don't come in. If I don't have a computer, or well, no, well, back in my day, sorry, I was kind of old, so I didn't have a computer back in my room. I had a VCR,
Oh,
and
well,
I had movies that had
yeah.
sex scenes.
I had the cable box, the black box, and then there was like a little switcher on it. So like I just hit that switcher so I could watch all the premium channels.
My dad had that box in his room.
Oh my god. Oh my god. My mom had it. Did she have it in the front room? Oh, I think she had it in the front room. And then she had a splitter that went off to the bedrooms. And so middle of the night, you just go in, hit that splitter, switch. Tick 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 tick
I
tick.
feel mad old because most people are probably like, "What?" Well, maybe our listeners know because our listeners are not that young. I mean, they're not old, but they're not like mad young where they wouldn't know this. Ah,
But for those of you who don't know at all what we're talking about, there used to be these black boxes. So imagine Hulu and Netflix and all of that didn't exist. And it was just you're stuck with TVs and commercials. Well, for shows like that you watch on HBO Max now and that you watch on Showtime and all of that, those apps that they have, you know, you used to have to pay for that as like an upgrade to whatever it is you were getting at the time as far as cable went. And then they went a little bit more digital, and then you had satellite, and then you had more channels, and it was just like the same thing as you would start to buy channel packages. So you get a small amount of for per month, or you'd get like this massive package where you get everything: ESPN, HBO, Showtime, Stars, all of that, Playboy, everything in this package for whatever. And so back it up a little bit into the little black box. The little black box, if you just had regular television, it allowed you to access the premium channels like HBO, Stars, Playboy after a certain
Yep,
hour.
but you had to do what? What you have to do to access it? Click.
You had to
You had to push
click
that button
click
and
that
click from
button.
A. You had to go
Push
from
that
A to
button.
B.
Yeah, just so that you could do that. Or else you were stuck watching the little lines go by on the TV, trying to catch a little peek at the scene. If I back up far enough, can I see the whole picture? Bruh. Bruh.
I've tried to watch a many a bad movies through that little scrap of lines.
Oh my god. And then the best thing is because like the lines would keep going and the page would be all crazy and fuzzy, and then there was like a moment where it stood still for like a second. It was like slightly distorted, but it was still enough for you to see
Make it
exactly what
all
was
out.
happening, and then it
Yep.
went back to crazy
And the funny
again.
thing is the reason why this is so appropriate to what we're talking about is because that was a boundary. They were trying to create a boundary
Yeah,
so you could kind of see what's on the other side, but not enough to be able to enjoy it and watch it freely.
right.
And that's the thing is we have those blurred lines, those blurred boundaries. And it's very,
Hey,
I
hey,
see you,
hey.
yep, I know I had the song in my
Hey,
head too
hey,
after I said it.
hey.
Um, and that's why this conversation is so important, you know. So, sorry, I just wanted to bring it back
No,
because
no, of course. No, we're
um, I know we're kind of out of practice, y'all. So please bear with us. But I found something that was like the 10 signs of you lack of boundaries
mm,
because we were talking about, yeah, I know, man, I'm coming. I've been in school, man, so I'm coming prepared. So I'm not just there. So I'm going to read them out. All right. So we'll go through
absolutely.
it. So, number one, you fail to speak up when mistreated.
Mm,
Number two, you give away too much of your time.
mm,
Three, you agree when you actually feel like disagreeing. Four, you feel guilty for dedicating time to yourself. Five, you feel taken for granted by others.
mm,
Six, you have toxic relationships.
mhm,
Seven, you have chronic fear about what others think of you. Eight, you overshare details about your life with others. Nine, you constantly feel like the victim. 10, you attract people who try to control or dominate you.
mm. It's it's interesting because as you were reading those off, it was so spot on because that's again, a couple of things that you had mentioned kind of is what sparked the conversation Will and I had. Because just thinking about it, like you and I have even talked about it a little bit on the podcast. I think it's in our trailer even of how can you trust my yes if I can't even tell you no?
Mm,
It's so important to be able to set that boundary, to be able to give someone a clear line of like, hey, don't cross this. It also gives you an out to be like, hey, I asked for this not to happen. It happened. Cool. I can go now. Like I don't have to expend my energy any further. But it's crazy to think about how much those things overlapped with how I was before, a lack of boundaries just because I didn't know how to set them before I gained the vocabulary and the ability to.
mhm.
What was I'm kind of curious. What was like a time where you felt outside of being like a teenager? We'll talk about that example in a minute. But like outside of being a teenager and having parents barge into your room, or going through your phone or whatever it was for you, like what was a moment you experienced that really felt like it was just a complete it, um bulldozing of your boundaries? Or where you felt like you didn't set boundaries where you should have.
The number one it'll have to be with my mom is learning how to set boundaries with my
Mm,
mother. And I say that because as the youngest son, as the son that's local or that's close, as the son that's quote unquote, you know, the most accessible, I had a hard time setting those boundaries with my mom to have her respect me as a man, as a husband, as
Mm,
a man, as a man who is a husband who has his own family. I felt like my mother didn't respect my boundaries of being able to let me be me and focus on my family. She leaned so heavy on me, like I was her husband.
mm. Ooh.
So it was like there was that blurred lines and those boundaries that were being crossed, and nothing, you know, indecent or anything. It's just, it's that I need you to help me, but it's like I need to focus on my own responsibilities on this side. I need to focus, give all my love and attention to my family, but you are too busy trying to take that away to focus on you. And so that was the
Mm.
most hardest thing for me, was to be able to say hard stop. No, I don't have to answer. You will figure this out. I have to focus on me. And that's one of the for me personally, I think the hardest place to set boundaries and to hold on to those boundaries is with your family. Your friends or people you don't know, your coworkers, you can do that. It may be a little difficult, but you can do that. You can set your boundaries. After a while, you're just gonna be like, you know what? No, I'm not doing this, or I can't do this, or you're doing too much. But with your family, it's like they have that little extra bit of, you owe me. Yeah,
A
they got that
hook.
hook. They got that
Ooh,
hook
yeah.
that you owe me. Like if it's your parents or your siblings, something like that, it's like you owe me, or you know, you have to because we're family.
Right.
And it's hard. It's hard, So how about for you?
For me, I think, well, first off, I mean, thank you for sharing that. I understand how hard that is, especially because like that thing that you've expressed, there's actually a name for it, for that where a parent treats their child like a significant other rather than their child. It is called
The Oedipus?
covert.
Oh,
No, actually, it's called covert incest, which is also known as emotional incest. It is a type of abuse in which a parent looks to their child for emotional support that would be normally provided by another adult. The effects of that on children when they become adults are thought to mimic um, are thought to mimic, that sort of like necessity for that healing and things like that, where you become a caretaker, you do all of that extra, above and beyond, even for people who don't deserve it. And so, that being one of the biggest boundaries that are hard to that shouldn't be permeated, but that it's hard to kind of like build back from because it creates such like a natural root inside of you. I mean, much along the lines of like family and boundaries. I think for me personally, I mean, I have a few I have a few moments. I've actually I'm not even gonna think about. I'm not even gonna bring up family. I think like an experience I've had as an adult. Um, huh, being able to say no. I was in a relationship. I was in a very mutually abusive relationship. It was mutually abusive. In the sense of like there was stuff happening that was triggering my trauma responses and um in which I acted in ways that I didn't feel you know representative of me, and in a space of dissociation, which was wild to kind of experience dissociation for so long. But that whole time I had quite literally the full on experience of my boundaries just constantly being permeated, constantly being walked over, even if I tried to kind of set them, but then I couldn't. Like I would remember being shut down. I remember being like, I would. So, for those who have not listened to the podcast before, I have DID, dissociative identity disorder. It's like multiple personalities. Um, and so one of my personalities is they're small. They're a small personality. They don't have a voice. They don't talk. And so this personality, in the midst of my dissociation or my disconnection from the rest of my consciousness, this personality kicked in, and like even though we're screaming from the inside, this is what we want, say this please, like just get this to stop, do something, it wouldn't come out because it was just so like you felt trapped. And that begets so much anxiety, so much pain, so much negative self-talk. All of these things are domino effect from the lack of boundaries. And I think, yeah, boundaries are important with friends, boundaries are really important with family. And I think if there's somebody close enough to you to be a significant other, I feel like it's the same level as family, because if that person's going to be in your life, or if you're building to have someone in your life like that, or someone's in your life like that, then I think it's important that it's the same level of like boundary setting as you would have for family.
That was a very, very valid and fair point, and thank you for sharing all that you did share. Um, that was really good, and thank you for feeling safe enough to talk about the disorder on here for those that don't know.
Of course, of course. Education is elevation. Shout out to
Yes,
Consciously.
yes.
I was thinking about what you were saying from what you shared about family, just because that being one of the hardest things to kind of get through, especially if you say, say you haven't connected with a family member in a really long time or at all. Um, and you're so eager to get to know them, to be in their lives and everything. And you're talking with them, and they're giving you all of this advice, giving you all of this stuff, and like you're feeling so like, yeah, I'm into it, yeah, I could do that. You're in that, like, it's kind of like new relationship energy, when you're re-meeting family members and stuff like that. But there's this also, especially like maybe it's a parent, maybe it's somebody older than you, that you feel that sort of like, I should listen to their advice kind of vibe. Like, I get how easy it is to get swept up in their desires, their ideas, their things that they want, because they have it already established, they already have their knowledge. And I I I mean, I'm kind of giving, at the same time, we'll have a little bit more of like a formal of like, oh, how do we work on this? But like, I'm kind of giving a little bit that's at the same time, because as I think about it, I'm like, the more you start to know yourself, I feel like the more you go on that journey, of of self discovery, the understanding of self desire, you know, like self's true desire for what we might want in the future. I think that comes with, that brings more strength in boundary setting, more more um more knowledge as far as where to set boundaries and when to, because I think that's also something that's hard, is to know when to set boundaries,
That is
you
a
know
word all in itself, knowing when to set boundaries and knowing how to set boundaries. That
Ooh.
you man, you're preaching over here for real. Um, wow, wow. You really touch on a couple of great points. And me being the person that I am, I think a lot about kids. I think a lot about kids in that respect. And it's like
Mm,
how you said, choosing a partner and having a partner doing that. But I think about, let's rewind it back even further beyond the partner or finding a relationship. It's just learning how to go to school and knowing how to set those boundaries so you can feel protected and safe and noticed while in school, so you can develop
yes.
those relationships, those healthy relationships. So you already know how to have those boundaries when you become into those intimate relationships.
Mm. I have a good challenging question for you. Um, what are thoughts on setting boundaries with other authority figures outside of the home, like, um, we're not gonna touch the elephant in the room of authority figures
Hmm.
because that's just a whole other set of episodes on in and of itself. But, like, say teachers, because there's an increasing number of videos that come out and things that stories that pop up about it, individual teachers who may have their own certain views on things, and they like push it to a point where like it really is just like beating the children down, or they have a strict set of rules that they follow. Like what yeah, what are your thoughts on setting boundaries with those types of authority figures?
That's a hard one. And I say it's a hard one because a lot of time that comes from the home. And the pandemic actually made that a lot more obvious. So you will see the respect that a student will have for a teacher by the way that the parents speak about said teacher at home. So if the parents are really negative, hard, they got their own opinion about these teachers, the student's going to walk in with that same thought process and that same feeling, that same energy. They're going to keep that energy going. So it's kind of like if we all can have a clear cut communication of honesty, then those healthy boundaries can be put up and can be set properly. And I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's like it may sound like I'm talking in circles, I'm not making any sense, but I'm gonna try and break it down like
Yeah,
this.
you're making great sense.
As an educator, we deal, well, for me in my own personal experience, I'm an educator who deals with the entirety of elementary school students.
Mhm.
There is not one student on campus that we don't interact with. Now, that's well over 30, well over 60, well over 100, 200, 500 students,
Mm.
500 different personalities,
Yeah.
500 different households that I have to understand how to communicate and how to deal with.
Mm.
Even if it is for 50 minutes or 30 minutes or even just a passing fleeting moment, I have to know how to make a quick judgment and how to make that kid, that child feel safe, feel noticed, feel loved, feel heard.
Mm. That
Now, if,
that's
huh?
important. I said that's important.
Yeah. So, and I'm saying that because it's important because when you go into just the one classroom where you have this one teacher that is with, let's say, 30 kids for 5 hours with 30 different, again, 30 different personalities, 30 different households, 30 different upbringings, it's so hard to juggle and figure out how to navigate the proper way. And when everybody's vying for your attention,
Mm.
vying for your approval, especially when they don't get it at home, you have a lot to deal with. So sometimes those teachers don't know how to manage that. And some people are like, well, then they shouldn't be teachers. Are you telling me you don't have a bad day at work? Are you telling me you don't make mistakes at your job? So that's why you shouldn't be in your job anymore? It's like we have to allow that grace to figure out or to make those mistakes and grow from. So a lot of these teachers need to understand that. It's like we need to know how to, one, have our own boundaries for ourselves with our admin, boundaries from the parents, boundaries for the
Mhm.
students, and boundaries so we can have that growth. And then the other one is the students. We need to train them up and teach them how to create their own set of boundaries and nurture those boundaries within school. Be like, hey, if this kid is touching you too much, you need to learn how to speak up and say, hey, back up, or hey,
Mhm.
don't touch me, or hey, don't talk to me. We have to teach those boundaries.
Right. Right. It's interesting because I think back to being a kid. I think back to those moments where, yeah, we're growing. We have a lot of like, at the time, like we have a lot of energy. We have a lot of hormones coursing through our veins and things like that. That like, it's like, oh man, I'm so angsty. That we, but like, that's some real shit that you go through. And like outside of those things, because those things are gonna happen, those things are gonna be, and I mean, I don't have a teenager yet, but I understand because I've been one. uh Bruh, I said yet. You're also on your way to another
Again,
teenager again.
again.
Again, yeah, so I'm saying another teenager. I'm gonna have two at the same time.
Yes.
And so um but like, so I think about the power struggle that happens with parents and you know children. The power struggle that happens within the house of like, even in the beginning, being tiny humans, toddlers, there's a phase where they're pushing boundaries to see, like, oh, what can happen, what can I get away with, what can I do, how do I work this reality, you know and
I call that
and
testing the fence.
yes, trying to see where they can, where's the weak spot, or how can you get over, you know um and it so like I understand those pieces for growth and development, but there's also, you know I feel like there's a space of growth for the parent that we don't even get to see or like address usually. I mean, especially with how we grew up. Yeah, as you mentioned at the top of this, of having parents being like, this is my house, my rules, whatever I say goes. You don't get any locked doors, you don't get any privacy. There ain't no boundaries. When you pay for the roof, then you can set all the rules and boundaries you want, whatever
Facts.
whatever that is, right? But like, it's so crazy because a lot of the stuff that I think that needs to be done, it needs just modeled in the home. Like, when we talk about the whole reason for this podcast, like we talk about the things that we didn't get. We talk about the things that we feel like are important for the future. We talk about the things that we feel like are important conversations to be had amongst people, regardless, male-bodied individuals, like, having mature oh my gosh, for those of you who don't know, Omega just brought Journey in and completely derailed all my thoughts. Hi. So
I'm
cute.
sorry. I
Ah.
just wanted you to say hi while she's here.
Hi. He's so cute. Hi.
Sorry. You were really on a
You're
roll,
so
and I'm so
squishy.
she is squishy. She's amazing.
No, you're good. um I was saying I feel like it needs to be taught in the home. Like I feel like those are the important pieces, like the reason why we had this podcast, so that we could talk about taxes, so we could talk about, finance in general, so that we could talk about how to deal with anger and fear and all of these things, talking about boundaries. I know, like I said before, we talked about it on a previous episode, but it was like a piece of it, talking with Will. I think it was even an episode he was on, and a few of his friends and individuals, and like, I think it's something that deserves that level of like, there's the little packet of information you need to give to your home and teach your children before you send them out into the world and have them be fully, quote, functional adults in in society. Like, just because, like, shit, we're thrown out here, up the creek without a paddle, and we have to like learn how to first find something that could be a paddle as you're like floating down the stream, and then figure out how to whittle it into a paddle before you go over that waterfall. And by the time you figure it out, you're like, oh, great. And you're paddling for your life, paddling for your life. It's just like, man, you should have just set me up with the tools beforehand. Like, like, right, Journey?
She
Yeah, see, she nodded.
she legit nodded.
she,
Yeah, you right. You
she
right.
gave me a
Yeah, that's right,
yeah.
Uncle Z. You talk about it. Yeah.
Exactly. This is the things you're gonna learn because it's so pertinent. Like even just you having a little girl, you know, like her having strong boundaries is gonna mean the world for her. I mean, like s- strong mind, strong willed, strong all of that, like boundaries, everything. She'd be like, "Psh, nothing can touch me.
See,
Yeah,
and I'm glad you
uh."
brought that up because when you were speaking about, you having your two tiny humans and you're saying, they're going to be teenagers at the same time, my thought process was you have two boys.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a relationship with them that's very different where you're going to be able to relate to them. They're going to be able to relate to you
Yep.
when it comes to those boundaries, and how we talked about,
Yeah.
like, those unspoken boundaries that we had growing up with our between our parents. Like you're gonna have to go through that too,
Right.
right? So for me, with girls, it was very different. It was my boundaries was I had to learn early. Like with my daughter, with my oldest, it was very, very I set those boundaries because I needed to
Mm-hmm.
train her up to know that she's important, her voice matters, that she does have a say so. We are the end all be all when it comes to those say so, but she does have a say so. So it's like I'm gonna come into that. I'm not gonna
Facts.
just barge into her room. What do I look like doing that? Number one, I'm dad. Two, I'm
Right.
a man. Three, she's her own person. I want to respect her space so she feels
Right.
comfortable. When she's hurt, upset, angry, or has anything going on, and she's behind her closed door, I would never ever, and I have never ever opened her door and just barged in to go save her.
Right.
I've had quite a few conversations sitting right outside that door and respecting that boundary, that safety, that that space,
Mm.
and saying,
Mm.
talk to me. If you don't feel like talking about it, I respect that and I understand that. But just know dad is here,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and those things are important. And with me restarting a real GP, remember my mentorship program that I started,
Yeah.
that's something this conversation actually told me we need to talk about boundaries
Yeah.
because that's something that these middle school kids need to understand is you're having healthy, safe boundaries. And it does start at home, but it also starts within themselves.
Yeah. And I
And
think
good luck. Middle school is the most volatile time. So
yeah, I
yeah,
remember.
yeah. So that preteen time, good
I
luck. I'm
I
praying.
remember I had friends who were psycho.
Say bye. She's gonna go with mommy.
uh, Bye, Journey. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Have a Drink podcast. Come back
Uncle
to
Z
sit,
said
think,
bye.
and have a drink of your milk.
Say bye. Say bye.
Bye. Yeah,
I
so
love you.
cute.
Here, babe.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
Right.
You killed me with the cuteness.
You see
Uh,
how comfortable she was though?
oh yeah.
Just
Oh yeah.
chilling. Yeah,
She's just
that's my
chilling.
road dog.
Heck yeah. Ride
That's
or
my
die
angel.
right there. Loving it. I think I think it's important too because like you brought up a really great point. Actually, it's multi-layered to what we've been talking about. We talked about the different spaces in which we have boundaries that we set, but I think it's also important that we talk about the different types of boundaries that we set.
Hmm.
Because there are, I think, what, 5 different types of boundaries that should be set. It's important to recognize and to set them and to understand that it is completely within, your human rights to do so. One being physical. Obviously you're referring to your personal space or your privacy, your body, um you might know somebody who's like comfortable with public displays of affection and like hugging, kissing, etc., hand holding, or you might be or know someone who's like, I don't want to be touched in public. Those are two different but valid boundaries to have, you know
100%.
and it's important to set. Same thing when it becomes intellectual boundaries. So intellectual boundaries are like boundaries concerning your thoughts, your beliefs. They're not respected when someone diminishes another person's ideas or opinions, and so that sort of stuff kind of like gets trampled on. Obviously, we have a lot of like very extreme, very volatile responses to people's inner thoughts and world and intellectual beliefs and morals at the moment. But, again, everybody's entitled to their own. It's just comes a problem when people start acting on the extreme parts of it. Um, and I think another one is emotional boundaries, as I think we've talked about, here as well. Referring to the person's feelings. You might not feel comfortable sharing your feelings about everything with a friend or a partner or an entire podcast of people listening to you.
Hmm.
And instead, you might want to do it gradually over time with someone you feel super comfortable with. But like, again, different ranges. Like it's open. Like me, no problem. You want to know what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling? Psh, you open Pandora's box. Prepare.
Good luck.
Right? Um, Another being one that you don't think about, financial. Financial boundaries are really important to set. This one, it's, I mean, you can guess it's all about money. If you like to save money, not spend it on trendy things or like lattes and stuff, you might not want to loan money to a friend who needs money or wants to spend money on trendy things and whatnot. You know, again, completely important boundaries. And I think inside and outside of, romantic personal relationships, home situations, I think it's important to have a good, healthy boundary around your own personal finances, even if you come together. Again, you don't want to be like fucking up your shit all left and right, and then it like leaves you high and dry
Right.
with your partner at home, and you guys are like freaking out like, what are we gonna do? And struggling to eat, because like very real situations. Was talking about a few of those things, like people living in living in that life quite literally.
Right.
You have somebody being like, I want to save money, I want to make sure we can eat every month, and we can do all the things and pay all the bills. Don't have enough money come in, so it might be a good idea to budget. And then having it being flipped, and the person's just like, well, we didn't, and we're still freaking out, so now I want to take over and I'm going to do this, and then they just blow all the money, and you're like not even done with the month, and if you got like $4 in your bank account, and like, what the fuck? Like, you have all of that, and that's boundaries that aren't set between the two, of like, hey, this is going to be separate. If this isn't coming at this time, then we're going to be without, or like,
Hmm.
obviously everything has consequences. Even permeating boundaries have consequences. Consequences can be good, consequences can be bad, but consequences
Right.
exist for everything. And I think that's important to keep in mind too, as like you make these decisions and make these boundaries.
Wait,
And
wait,
the
wait, wait.
fifth
Before you
and
go on to the
final,
fifth and final, but also knowing your own
yeah,
boundary in that regard and knowing where you can be successful and not. Because even speaking on financial, it's like knowing if you know you're not good at money, let it go and let your spouse deal with it if they are good with money or if they have a better understanding.
for
Let it
real,
go.
for real,
And if your spouse does let it go
seriously,
into your responsibility because of that, trust them and do that.
right. I mean, don't like give everything over without knowledge. If you want to learn, probe them to learn, because situations happen, you know lives can be lost at some point, heaven forbid. You know, think, relationships can transition and diverge, and you might be left not knowing what to do then, and don't feel like you're without to be able to reach out and say, "Hey, I don't know this thing, please teach me." Even that right there is following that's a it's like a weird space, because I'm like, I want to say it's a boundary, but like, it is something that takes that level of security that comes from setting boundaries in order to kind of say, "Hey, I need a little
Right.
extra help
Right.
here." And like I said before, it's a lot of things kind of fall into place
100%.
because of it.
Sorry about that, but I
Um
just wanted to add that. Continue, please.
no, no, no,
Number
no,
five.
no. Absolutely. 5, and the final one being sexual. And I think this is important, especially for young teens and young adults. Like, sexual boundaries are important. Oh my gosh, so important. We talk about having boys. Yo, no means no. Like, that is a constant thing I've had to teach other kids. I've had to teach other people's children, young boys.
Girls too, though,
Yeah, oh, totally. Absolutely. Saying
because a
no
lot
is
of times
really
we always go
important,
straight to
because I've
boys.
interacted with
Yeah,
little
we'll go to
girls that have
boys.
not have never been told no, and to watch them freak out because they're like, "What? No, I'm not immediately getting what I want. I'm not immediately getting princesses and praises." Like, "No. I told you fucking no, knock it that shit off.
Hmm.
Like, that shit don't fly here."
Don't touch me.
You know?
It's crazy, and I say that because I mean, as people do know, we work in sports entertainment, so we have to mind our p's and q's at all times.
Mhm.
We have to look out for the people that we protect and that we work with,
Mhm.
and to see them being, and I'm just being honest, to be sexually assaulted by both male and female
Right?
is preposterous to me. Because I'm like, okay, why do you think it's okay? Don't tell me you've been drinking or whatever. Why do you think that's okay? It's like, keep your hands to yourself.
On the flip side, would that be okay if somebody did it to you? Like, I feel like I wanna ask those people that, like, because people, again, something I've said frequently on this show, which is, people aren't moved to action unless it directly affects themselves, and
A
that
100%.
and that I think is the key piece of it too.
You're right. Because I legit had to tell some people like, yo, like, you don't do that. Keep your hands to yourself. What is wrong with you?
Yeah,
And I know we're in a customer service based industry,
right.
but sometimes you just gotta be straight up with them. It's like, yo, it's like I can be Chick-fil-A all you want, but eventually I'm gonna have to tell you straight up like Popeyes, like, what the fuck's wrong with you, nigga?
For real though, like, better step up out my face, because we've entered fuck around and find out territory. Uh, uh, seriously, I mean, but back to describing a little bit more about, like, sexual boundaries that could be set. Obviously these are expectations concerning intimacy. Sexual comments and touches might be uncomfortable for some people. This kind of goes back into, like, physical boundaries, but, like, sexual as well. Like, some people might not like having their nipples played with or mouths on them or whatever. Like, it's a lot of, like, the very specific things, like, please don't breathe on me. Like, while
Don't
we're
kiss
while
them.
we're being intimate, don't kiss me while we're being intimate. I've
That's a big
had
one.
people, that is a big one. It's it's a lot of those conversations too are things you have in the beginning of, again, this part will probably be like a whole episode in of itself, as we dive into probably more sexual topics. um but like, when you meet somebody, imagine you go on a date, you go back to their place, back to your place, hotel, whatever, and you sit down. You haven't had drinks yet. You've had a lovely adventure out. You decide to bring it back so that maybe you could have some drinks. and y'all are sitting down and having a conversation about sexual history, sexual health and testing, talking about your your likes and dislikes, your hard limits, your soft limits, your curious abouts. Imagine having all of that in the context of like a boundary type conversation, saying, "Here, this is me. This is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is all of what you need to know for this interaction to go any further if we decide to do that."
Right.
Like talking about clearly, I would like, and I have expectations in those boundaries too. You can state, I would love for, not like I expect it to happen, but like I would love for this to happen. And the other person could say, yeah, hell, fuck yeah. Hell yeah, fuck it. Hell yeah, fuck yeah. Or, for wanting to like be down and into it. Or they could say, no, I'm cool. Like,
I'm
okay,
good,
wow,
bro.
thank you for sharing that. That's not something that interests me. But hey, I don't yuck anybody's yum. So like, go for it. But yeah, that's the importance of understanding the different types of boundaries.
Right.
Um,
Can I
and
ask a question before you move on?
yeah, yeah.
And this is open to our audience as well. Is wanting to ask, even though you know or you believe you know that it's going to be turned down, but having the safe space to ask the question and not feel ridicule.
Ooh,
That is a boundary or a safe space that is hardly explored because there's a lot of people that feel like that. So how do you figure out a way to ask that question and do that and not feel ridiculed? Because there are
I'm
questions
one of those
within
people
me,
that feel that.
me too.
Yeah.
I there's questions that I have to ask that I want to ask, but I already know the moment it leaves my lips, the question is going to get blown out of proportion and it is going to go far left.
You may know, but you don't know. You also don't know. That's the thing. It's Schrodinger's cat.
Right,
For those of you who don't know what that is, it's like Schrodinger had a cat in the box, and before he lifted the lid, he kind of like theorized that right now the cat exists in both the state of being alive and being dead. So the possibility is basically endless of like what it could possibly be, flipped back and forth. So like you may know what is going to be said based off of past
right,
experiences of like, hey, I left the cat in the box for this long. It's going to be dead when I lift the lid. But you don't know because maybe that cat might still be alive in
right,
there as you lift the lid and you're like, oh shit, I'm pleasantly surprised. I mean, that's happened with me, like it has taken for those moments of feeling like, ooh, I want to ask this question, but I already know what the answer has been, and I feel like it's going to be that way again. So what's the point of even
right,
asking?
right.
It took some time to muster up that kind of like, you know what? I It had to have been a day where I was in like full fuck it. Like I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna kind of go for it, or I might have had a little liquid courage
I knew that was
and I
coming.
was just like, you know what? It's a little bit more of a, you know what? Fuck it. Like that that kind of a fuck it in you. And so like, but it gave a little bit more of like I'll ask, what's the worst that's going to happen? No. No is the worst that's going to happen.
I like to feel like no would be the worst that could happen. No, if no was the worst that could happen, I'm okay with that. It's what follows up that no. It's that hell no, motherfucker, and then
Don't you dare ever ask me a dumbass question like that ever again. I don't even know what possessed your mind to even get your lips to formulate the words to ask me
are
that
you out of
shit.
your rabbit ass mind?
You sound rabid. We need to go get you checked. Did you get bit by a dog?
Is this
Go treat you like old Yeller, put you down.
you done lost your scruples?
Screw you just lost your scroll. Your whole scroll.
That's funny.
um, but yeah, I think it'd be good. I'm gonna try to make this portion a little bit quicker, but to talk about ways we can set and maintain good boundaries.
Right.
Because like we talked about the different types, we talked about our experiences and what it's like, and many different examples for people to relate to. But I think a thing that would be great is to know how to set and maintain those
Right. Right.
boundaries.
Right.
Um, and I'm reading this off of Psych Central. They did a study talking about boundaries and how to set them, how to recognize them, understanding what a boundary is, all of that. And so this was part of their list. But the first way is to enjoy some self reflection. You have, in order to, like I said, as I said before, in order to set boundaries, in order to even introduce them into your life, you need to understand, what's important to
Hmm.
you, what and how that could possibly benefit you, benefit your emotional well-being, your mental, all of that. Um, just taking some time to just discover your own psychology will do you wonders. Um,
Can I do number two?
absolutely.
Start small. So if you don't have many boundaries in place already, the prospect of introducing more might seem overwhelming. So build them slowly.
Absolutely. Yes. Number 3, be consistent. So, letting boundaries slide, oh my gosh, it'll not only lead to confusion, but it'll also lead to a continuation of permeating said boundaries. Like it'll let people think that okay, this is the expectation for this person. They say they don't like it, but then they get a little bit over here and then there's so much more into it. You know, that in many situations that would be, SA, and that's not no. Like, and so like
Hmm.
I think making sure you're consistent in those is really important.
Creating a framework. So very, if you find it helpful, there's no reason not to have a few basics in place that can be adapted accordingly. So just be very, very specific about what you want and what you need and how you
Mm,
have it framed.
yes. Feel free to add extras. In some aspects of our lives, there are boundaries already in place, such as like, in the workplace, but consider these the minimum. Colleagues will likely have some of their own in place, and it's okay for you to add some too. Like it's okay for you to have your own personal boundaries in addition to the ones outside in the world. Like there are some, the boundaries that you set in the house, the boundaries you set in your various relationships, in the workplace. Those are really important um, to keep yourself feeling comfortable, healthy, safe.
Be aware of social media. That's a big one.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of oversharing that happens on social media. So knowing how to create those boundaries and not allow those boundaries to be blurred on social media. So if you deem a particular action as a boundary crossing in real life, your concerns are no less valid when they occur digitally.
Mm. Mm. That's interesting. Not a lot of people think about that. Like, I mean, early years of my life, I didn't think about that
Hmm.
either. You know, like I was very much I'm this way in person, and then as soon as I got onto that Twitter, I was like, this motherfucker, this bitch, that, oh, so stupid, this blah 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 blah. I was like, I was reading it, and I was like, who the fuck is
That
this?
code
I
switching,
was like, this is not me.
knowing how
Yeah.
to code switch on social media in real life.
Bruh. Actually, next one being talk, talk, talk. Communication is crucial in the world of boundaries, especially if someone is consistently overstepping your boundaries. While you might need to raise your concerns, these discussions need not be confrontational. You could have a friend who messages nonstop. But like, it's okay to be like, hey, like, instead of just kind of like, the person's just like messaging you over and over again. No, fuck it. I'm gonna even give you a personal example. Like my mom would do this thing. Oh, I love her so much. She would do this thing where instead of sending, like, she'd have a thought, she'd send the message, and instead of sending the whole paragraph that she would send in one message, she would send each sentence in its own separate message. So I'm just getting ding, 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 ding. I'm like, you couldn't have just like wrote this and then like, oh, that's a good idea. I should add that. Oh wait, and this. Oh, this thing feel like this all goes together in the same fucking message so that I just get one. But like, and so instead of me like getting to that point of like, Mom, will you just please for like 2 seconds take some time to write a full paragraph and send it? Instead of me going through that, I was just able to be like, hey, Mom, I love you so much and I appreciate you reaching out and wanting to communicate with me, but like, hey, when you're sending me a lot of messages like that are separated in so many, it starts to give me anxiety because I feel like something is really in need of my attention, or I feel like it's an emergency, and I'm used to receiving a lot of messages with that context. So if you could keep all of the thoughts, if you can, into one message, not keeping them in a box of like, you know, you can't fuck up, but like it allows for like, hey, these are still my boundaries. And like, if you can't, and stating if you can't, that's the important piece. If you can't, then I'm going to need to take said action.
I like that. That was great. Be your biggest champion. So for boundaries to have a strong foundation, you need to show yourself a bit of love. So it doesn't take much to start encouraging
Mm.
this mindset. So the more you engage in activities, that release feel good hormones like singing, running, or whatever you do, things that feed your own heart, then that's going to help change your internal dialogue and make you feel more deserving.
And last but not least, gain some perspective. Not having boundaries can be detrimental to our mental health, but going too far and overthinking them can also impact our emotional well-being. It's great to think about how you could set boundaries. It's horrible when you let all of it kind of like consume you and being like, I can't, I have to be this way. I have to, did I do that right? Is that boundary set? Because, I mean, again, people have anxiety. A lot of things, in the world are chaotic and anxiety and fear inducing at the moment. And, it doesn't, I mean, people who do that, they understand it doesn't do us any good, and it's hard to get out of it. But I think finding a little bit of space and giving yourself a little bit of a, I'm gonna use an omega word, giving yourself a little bit of grace in order to, you know, get through this learning process, understanding that, your boundaries are healthy for you if you have a certain level of them, and to know that you're like, I can feel secure in these things being about me. And to be honest, there's personal experience, there's a feeling of feeling free when you're able to do so, because you could clearly say, hey, I'm really not gonna do that. That's not something, I feel like I want to do any longer. Whether you're working for a company where you're like, I'm a performer. I would not like to have to come and break my back and risk injury in order to get the show going. I'd rather devote all of that energy and that, like, a little bit more safety towards my own body and myself and be able to give the best possible performance. But if I'm like broken, I'm not going to be able to do that.
That part.
Have boundaries, but don't be distracted by them.
There you go.
Absolutely.
This was a great conversation back.
Hell yeah. I agree. I really, like I said before, I really miss this. I really appreciate us being able to find this time to hop on, to jump in, to sit, think, and have this drink. Um, talking about boundaries, man. Like I feel like this is just another step in the beauty that we can create.
I agree. I 100% agree. And man, you're simply amazing.
Likewise, brother.
You simply are amazing. You never cease to amaze me. You brought a lot out of me and a lot to my mind right now, and I appreciate it.
Mm.
I almost forgot how much this feels good.
Man,
This is my therapy.
same. 100%. Like uh, this is become something that has been a staple to my mental and emotional health. Um,
100%.
just because like there's a lot to say sometimes, but there's a lot to go through, and like that piece of why we created the show, of what we were doing before on tour, and now that we're not doing all of that, it's definitely been a piece that's been missing, of like us sitting down talking over a drink, getting getting through life with whatever it is. Like obviously those conversations are way less structured than we have here, but
Just
I'm
a little bit.
I'm thankful to be able to have, a focused, structured conversation with its own set of boundaries and moldability. Um,
Definitely.
all right, question for the Discord. Um, what are if at any that we did not mention, if at all, what are some styles of boundaries or types of boundaries that you feel um should be set? We've talked about workplace, we talked about friendship, we talked about relationship, we talked about family, but if there's any other ones you could think of, please reach out, let us know. Also, again, you know, uh, you could reach out on Discord. We're still on Discord. Our link is in the description. We're still doing all of that. It has been dead, but also because we've been on our little hiatus, getting life in order, dealing with our gifts, our blessings, taking that time to build greatness for each other and ourselves.
Thank you to all of our loyal listeners, to those that have been around, but also to those new ones. Hopefully, that we were able to spark another conversation within you, and you can continue this conversation. If not on our Discord, you can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can check us out pretty much on all social media platforms. It's weird to say this. Get those reviews in. Let us know how you like them. If you like it, if you don't, let us know. We just want to improve, and we want to continue to further this conversation. And also, what would you like to talk about with us?
Yeah. If you had a chance to sit, think, and have a drink, what would it be about?
Yeah, I think we might have to do a live show sometime soon,
I
and
agree. I
and
think it should
do
be on
this.
Twitch.
Okay,
I
I would
think we
love
should
it.
do a Twitch slash maybe YouTube live stream. Maybe I can do like a whole like Streamlabs OBS thing where we pop in and we can post to multiple platforms so that we can get people engaged, get those who are listening to us on there and be able to get their voices out. Maybe hey, let us know if you like the idea of us having like a hotline that you can call and leave a message and give us little voice messages or talk to us, and that we can listen to and answer on the show.
Or yeah, I
Um,
love that. And or you could still do the same thing on our Instagram. Hit us up on the Have a Drink podcast Instagram and leave us a voice note.
Absolutely. Leave us a voice note. Slide into those DMs. Trust me, we read all of our messages,
Right.
spam and all.
There you go.
I'm like, oh, we got a new message. Oh, it's spam. I'm gonna reply. I'm sorry, Mr. Robot. I don't want none of yo sex enhancement pills. Thanks. Click.
That's funny.
Shout out to our Patreon.
Oh
Thank
yeah.
y'all for supporting us even through our hiatus. I wasn't actually expecting that. I checked on it the other day, or I think a couple weeks ago, just because I was curious to see. I'm like, I felt really bad. I was like, we haven't posted anything. There hasn't been anything out, and I was very warmed to see that we still had people who are supporting us even through our hiatus, and that is something else that kind of gave that extra oomph to be like, we got to get back on here
We
because
appreciate
we
it.
have people supporting us still. Like, I want us to be able to give value to those individuals who
Yes.
have seen value in us and what we're doing. And I think, yeah, we can. The more we build, the more we grow, the more we can do that. And we haven't been able to do that without y'all. So shout out to our Patreon members, shout out to our loyal, lovely listeners, shout out to any of our new listeners. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful ride, and to many more episodes. But
100%.
100%.
We appreciate you. You are needed. You are
Yes,
necessary,
you are
and we love you.
loved.
And we
And
appreciate you. Thank you.
it's about that time.
It's about that time.
All right, kings, queens, and royals in between. I want to thank y'all for joining us again on another successful episode of the Have a Drink podcast, where we invite y'all back to sit,
Think
think,
and
and
have a
have a
drink.
drink. That's been us.
Peace.
Peace.
Sorry, guys, we're a little rusty. My man.
No, it's all good. It's all good. My brother.